Again, welcome everyone tonight to Fly Fishers International webinar with Kesley Gallagher. And this is from novice to champion. So let me give you a little information on you are on a webinar. So those of you that have done Zoom might be used to more interactive tonight. It's only Kesley and I can see each other. We can see that there's participants. If you have a question and if you have a clarification question, we can answer it. Otherwise, she's going to leave time at the end. Put it in the Q&A because we can't hear you and we can't see you. Oh, and we already have a raised hand. So I'll be checking also raised hands for questions. This is Fly Fishers International, sponsored tonight by Fly Fishers International Women Connect. And you can find us on Facebook at Fly Fishers International. You can find us on Facebook at Women Connect, Fly Fishers International. You can email us if you want to be on this mailing list and be alerted to webinars and Zoom happy hours, also called Zappy hours, fly tying nights. Send a note to us with your email at womenconnect@flyfishersinternational.org. Thank you, FFI, for making this happen. And so with all of that, let me introduce our lovely speaker tonight. I haven't ever met her before, but let me tell you, she is a delight and you are in for a treat. So Kesley Gallagher, she has been fly fishing since she was 10 years old. So like 2 years ago, because look at this lady. Oh my gosh. She's traveled throughout the US, Canada, the Caribbean, Central America, and the Pacific. And she is on the hunt for everything from trout to tarpon to billfish on the fly. She has not obtained 1. She has not obtained 5. She has not obtained 10. 13 IGFA records on the fly thus far. She enjoys competing. She enjoys these tournaments. One of the tournaments that she's a star in, and it's in my backyard, is the Ladies Tarpon Fly Tournament in Islamorada, Florida. And she won that tournament in 2018. In 2019, she did a tour of FFI, Club After Our Own Heart. And it was affiliated with the Southern California clubs, and her presentations. And by the way, Kesley, I need you to give me this presentation because I missed it. And it was Introduction to Flats Fishing. And so this, and you know what? Send us a note if you want, if we, for all of you that missed that presentation. And what it's about, it's the tactics and skills, and it's for taking redfish, bonefish, permit, tarpon on the fly. So, you know, if you've got all those, you've got a slam. So we need to know how to fish those, Kesley. She also teaches fly fishing for women every fall with the Southern Sierra Fly Fishers in California. She's been in numerous fly fishing magazines and fishing magazines. She's on the board of the California Trout Southern California Advisory Committee. She is a Sims Pro. She's a Rio ambassador. And besides that, she works. She works, people. She also has a job and works a lot for Amgen in Thousand Oaks, California. So it was a delight meeting you, Kesley. I apologize, everybody, if we get skippy, but hang in there and take it away, girl. I'm excited. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
That's quite an introduction, Sandy. Thank you. I hope I live up to it.
I was impressed. Let me tell you, I saw some videos. You're not going to be disappointed.
Okay. So anyway, thanks so much. I'm very honored to be here tonight to present to you my journey, essentially from horseback riding to tarpon. And this took me a few years, and you'll just see the progression of me as a fly angler and essentially as a person. So with this, I just wanted to explain this initial photograph to you. This is actually me sight fishing for carp in the Los Angeles River. So you can see it looks just like the Florida Keys. You can see the electric wiring, the concrete, the river itself, and what you don't see is the 5 freeway on the other side. So this is how I really started to fly fish and really start honing in on sight fishing. So I want you to think about that, the concrete jungle of Los Angeles versus the beautiful flats fishing of Florida. And how in the world did I get there? So without further ado, I'm also going to show you, for those of you who are not familiar with flats fishing, what it can be like.
Slowly strip that. Slow. Got him. Strip. You're a beast, Kesley. You're a beast. Still on, keep stripping. Yep, he's still on.
So that's an introduction to tarpon fishing. And for those of you who are very experienced tarpon anglers who probably saw a few mistakes, but really that's for the people or the anglers who have never even thought about tarpon and understanding what is it like. So next, who am I? I live in Los Angeles, California, 3,000 miles away from the flats of Florida. I have 13 IGFA records, as Sandy spoke to. And we'll be speaking a bit about IGFA and how to obtain those records. I am the 2018 Grand Champion for the Ladies Tarpon Fly Tournament. It was an achievement, again, considering that I'm from California and not Florida. I've been fly fishing since I was 10 years old, which is unusual, I'll admit. And honestly, I can't remember the first time I actually went fishing, but I definitely remember that first trout on the fly in Glacier National Park. I am, as Sandy said, I have a career. I'm a global operations director at Amgen, where I oversee the manufacture, distribution, and lifecycle management of over $2 billion worth of products. So there's no stress in my job. And also lastly, I'm not a guide. So this is just my personal journey as an angler, just going from trout to more advanced saltwater fly fishing. And also, this is a photograph of me taken over the summer. This is our local permit, as you would say, in California. It's called a California corbina. And you'll see a lot of photos of these fish. They're croaker in the surf, and they're very difficult to catch. But with COVID and everything else keeping me home, this is what I was targeting. So this is a picture of me at 10, the nerd that I am, truly. And, I was fishing and got this fish of the week up in Three Lakes, Wisconsin. And then next, moving to California after college and then exploring the Sierras. And this was before, this was wet wading, but, this is as I realized that really wet wading in the Sierras really required waders. And here is a photograph of me and my guide, Luis Cortez. And you'll hear, you heard Luis's voice in that video. You'll hear more about him as well throughout this presentation. So tonight, we will discuss my history, IGFA records, and pursuit of a tarpon championship. And really, it was a lot of work and a lot of effort and dedication on my part, and a lot of sacrifice. So I intersperse these sayings throughout, just to emphasize who I am and my ambition. So before I really started hammering fly fishing as a passion and as a pursuit, I was an equestrian, specifically in dressage. And this equestrian sport taught me a lot about being an athlete. It was something I had done since I was actually 4 years old, through high school, and then later into my late 20s, early 30s. So this is my mare, Parasol. I had her since the day she was born, and I raised her, trained her, and we were headed to a state championship, and I had hoped to bring her to a national title. So going back to what it is to be an equestrian athlete, it taught me grit. Essentially, if you can picture this, falling off a horse, dusting yourself off, and then getting back on and continuing. That's the essence of grit. It's never giving up. It's always pursuing that goal, having perseverance and tenacity. It also taught me that ambition is acceptable. In the arena, women compete, and it's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to have goals and to be out loud about them. And that was something that I had simply grown up with and I accepted. And that also developed an ability to be coached, to take criticism, to understand what constructive criticism is, and to do it better the next time. Also, something that became very important later in the fly fishing career is visualization. In dressage, you have to see the movement in your head. You have to see a transition between, say, an extended trot to a collected trot, or you have to picture a trajectory, so to speak, of a line of tarpon and where is that cast most effective. So again, playing the scene in your head before it actually happens. And if you mess up, playing it again in your head and understanding where the mistakes are and doing better the next time. And is everything. Time in the saddle, time on the water. You have to give it time. You have to be patient with yourself and also understand that it's a process. But always, always be focused on your goal and do everything. If you are doing something that does not contribute to achieving your goal, don't do it. So again, this is Parasol. She was my dream horse. She was wonderful. She learned fast. She was precocious. We had a fabulous time in the arena. These are other horses I trained. This is Irish Treasure. He was actually a thoroughbred off the Santa Anita racetrack, and I helped him get through second level. And this is Firefly. He was an Irish sport horse, and I helped to train him to first level. So again, I had ambitions of going to the state championship, third level national levels, and gaining potentially a national title. However, in 2006, my horse had severe colic and I had to put her down. And that actually crushed my dreams. So in 2007, I gave up riding. It just wasn't going to work. The logistics weren't there. And I just sunk my teeth into getting my Master's of Science at USC. In 2008, my father passed away. And then in 2009, I injured my back so severely that I essentially had broken my back. And they told me that not only would I never go jogging again, I would never ride horses again. I had lost feeling in my left leg. And so it was pretty bleak, but I said, I'm not going to quit. So I went fly fishing again. I took my rod out of my closet, dusted it off, and said, I'm going to go back to Mammoth and I'm going to go fishing again. So this is Tom April. He's a guide out of Mammoth Lakes. And he and I developed a great friendship. And he was my guide. And he took me steelhead fishing up in the Rogue River area. And I started to, just getting that passion back again. Steelhead are essentially a saltwater fish in a river. And I loved the fight they gave me. And, I just put myself into steelhead fishing. So here's some fish from the Trinity River. Here's another beautiful steelhead. And then this is a steelhead from the Rogue River. And also this is a brown trout actually from the northern realms of the Connecticut River in New Hampshire. So all of these were some of my favorite trout. But in the end, I said, I love fly fishing, but I'm traveling too far and it's not something I can do every weekend. So this is my state of California. This is where I live in Los Angeles. And this was where I was going fly fishing for steelhead and trout. You can see it's quite a bit of distance to travel. And I started thinking, you know, I really want to get more into fly fishing, but this is too far to travel for me. And I thought, well, what about this big blue thing to the west of me? How can I take advantage of that? So I befriended a lot of fly anglers at the Long Beach Casting Club, and they said, well, silly, why don't you go fly fishing in Long Beach? So this is a photograph of me fly fishing the bay in Long Beach. You can see the container ships in the background. And I would go there every weekend. And I would start fly fishing with a 7-weight, you know, bumped up from a 4-weight to a 7-weight. I was using a stripping basket, as you can see here, and then casting long distances, 80 feet at a time. And soon the word got around. And this is Doug Uematsu, who took me under his wing. He was my mentor, my sensei, so to speak. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about fly fishing Long Beach, about fly fishing for halibut. This is a record halibut he caught there. How to really cast long distances. He took me to one of our local casting ponds here in Los Angeles. And he really started hammering me about don't false cast, that one cast. And, you know, he taught me how to tie bimini knots, you know, these things that you don't necessarily pick up, but something that was becoming very important to saltwater fly fishing. He also introduced me to IGFA and the concept of getting a fly fishing record, which I had never heard of. And also that concept again of one cast. So no more false casting. It's just, you got to power through one cast, and it became very important when you start thinking about sight fishing on the flats. So mentors are always key. If you really want to improve your game, find someone who has far more experience than you and start learning. So what do you catch in Long Beach? So again, this is a corbina, a croaker. This is my first corbina ever. And the way people talk about corbina here in Southern California, you would think they're next to God, the fish that is. And it is truly a trophy here in Los Angeles on fly. And this is also another trophy. It's a spot fin croaker. They actually get much larger, but that's something we can also find in Long Beach. But what quickly started to happen was that I started finding big fish. And this is a 4-pound corbina I found one morning. And what I didn't realize is that for a woman fly fishing, this is actually a record fish. This is also another record fish. This is a California halibut. And had I known more about IGFA records at the time, I would have had 2 records under my belt. So again, it's not just going for a record, it's knowing that something like a fish in your backyard can actually potentially qualify. So word got out that there was this blonde woman who was catching large fish in Long Beach. And Doug's friend Wade Yoshi said, you know, Kesley, this is fun, but all you're doing is blind casting. And I want to introduce you to real flats fishing. It's sight fishing. I want to introduce you to bonefish. And I thought, okay, sure. What do you want me to do? And he said, well, I'll go to Andros Island in the Bahamas at least 7 times a year. And I think you'll like this. So this is Wade Yoshi with a 6-pound bonefish in the Jolters in Andros. And Wade really taught me a lot because he's competitive. And he would catch 30 to 40 bonefish at a time on the flats. And I would just watch him in the distance, just absolutely amazed. He also had, I think, about 300 plus permit on fly from Belize and also other areas. He also goes to Oahu at least once a year to try for those bonefish out there. But he taught me not just about sight fishing, he taught me how to travel with a fly rod, and that became also very important to me. So we said, let's go on a trip. And, you know, this is purely fly fishing. I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll be brave enough and I'll do this. And I thought, okay, so I said, I'm not going to go to Andros blind. I'm not going to go to Andros without some experience under my belt. So I called my brother who lives near Mosquito Lagoon in Florida. And I said, Bill, I need your help. What's this fish you have in the Mosquito Lagoon? He said, oh, it's redfish. And I said, I need to learn more about sight fishing. And my brother's this type of person who would say, I know just the guy you need to talk to. So he got me in touch with his good friend, Shane Murray, and we went fishing for redfish. And I had to learn about tailing fish. I had to learn about the push. I had to learn how to actually see the fish, not just blind cast to them. And it was some effort. Because it's completely overwhelming when you first experience it. But then I got used to it. And by the second day, I actually managed to catch a puppy drum. And this is my first redfish on fly from a flats boat in the Mosquito Lagoon. And I said, okay, at least I have some time under my belt. Maybe I'm ready for the Bahamas. So this is actually a photograph of what we call the jolters in northern Andros. And for those of you who know what a flats looks like, it's what's in the square, and it's actually very shallow water. And the bonefish come up onto the flat depending on the tide, and they feed. So this is what we were going to fish. And there are miles and miles of stalking bonefish on these flats. The trip is about, I would say, 6 days of walking the flats looking for bonefish. So it's pretty intense. So that first day, Wade looks at me and he says, you know, Kesley, it's going to take you at least 3 days to see these fish. And when you finally are able to see the fish, you're going to have to really work on that cast before you hook one. And then you're going to have to learn how to land it. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a really long 6 days. So we go out onto one of these flats with the sun behind us. And I see clearly, because it's clear water, I clearly see the school of bonefish. And because I had been practicing that one cast for so long in Long Beach, I cast and I hooked my first bonefish on that one cast. Well, and this is it. Needless to say, Wade wasn't happy with me because it had taken him 3 days. It had taken him a huge process. Even though he's an outstanding angler, he was still like, this wasn't supposed to happen this way. But again, it feeds to the idea, if you do your homework, if you practice, you can get ready for a trip. And I always kept that with me, like, how can I prepare? So we continued on and for a few days, and this is Elias and myself. The aim every day for me was try to get 10 fish a day. And so it was fantastic fun. I miss going there. I had gone there, I think, for, I would say, 4 trips over the years. And it's just 6 intense days of just walking the flats. And it's something I think everybody should do. But then I decided, it was fun doing bonefish, but I think I need a bigger redfish. And so I thought, well, Mosquito Lagoon actually was pretty hard. And so Wade and I went to an international fly fishing film tour. And we saw this man, Greg Dinney, on the screen with these giant red drum. And I said to Wade, I want to do this. Let's go do it. He said, okay. So we actually went in March to the bayous of Louisiana into New Orleans. And for the first few days, it was windy, it was stormy, it was a disaster. And my boyfriend tells me, who's from Louisiana, he's like, March is not a good time to go, but we went anyway. So this is Wade with his first redfish. It's a little bigger than the puppy drum from Mosquito Lagoon. And, that was exciting, but I hadn't gotten one. So I'm like, I got to get one. So on the very last day, I finally got my big red drum. And this was my very first big fish on fly. I caught her on a 9-weight. You can see it was a beautifully clear, sunny day, and I could clearly see the fish. Actually, I couldn't see the fish until she took the fly. Greg had said, cast as far as you can towards 11 o'clock and just start stripping. And she came up and grabbed the fly. And so my knees were shaking, my heart was in my throat. And he was telling me, put the rod left, put it right, just as a great guide will do with a true beginner. And we landed her. What I didn't really realize, but Greg told me about, was that At 27 pounds at that time, she was almost a record fish. So yet again, here we are. I became obsessed with the idea of getting a redfish record because it seemed like it was within my reach. So Greg said, well, if you really want to do this, you're going to have to come back next year, probably in February, when the bigger fish are in and they're heavier because they haven't bred yet. So again, I always say, dream it, plan it, and do it. So, I set the trip and I started to prepare. So I had to learn clearly the boat clock. Here you can see over here, that's a tarpon jumping, but I had to learn quickly, if a guide said the fish is going left to right at 11:30 at 60 feet, where to cast, where to look. And that's something you need to know, instantaneously when you're on the bow. I also had to learn simple casts. And this is actually an ideal cast. You have a bonefish, so to speak, going from left to right with a breeze off your left shoulder. So if you're a right-handed caster, this is ideal and you're perfectly set up. So I would cast to 11 o'clock. It's a forward cast, it's easy. But what happens when that breeze is off your right shoulder as a right-handed caster and the fish is going from right to left? Where do you cast? How do you cast? So here, this is where you have to put the fly in front of the fish. So you'll do a back cast at 1 o'clock. So all of this has to be instantaneous, because fish can appear at anywhere, especially redfish. You don't have time to set up your shot like you would bonefish. Sometimes they appear 10 feet from the boat. I also had to learn about gear. I had to get the right gear. And it helps if you have a good friend in the business, like my friend Alex Ramirez. And he set me up. He always sets me up with some of the best gear ever. So I owe him a lot. And this is why I'm saying that you have to know your gear. You have to know if you need a 9 weight, you have to know what kind of line you need. If you need a 10 weight, if you need, what do you need? Intermediate line, sinking line, what do you need? So always know what gear you need and be sure it's set up so everything is balanced before you go. So here we have an IGFA record pursuit. Now this is a 29-pound redfish that I got my second trip. And this fish required 3 casts. And I can remember it clearly. She was up sunning herself. It was a very cold day. She was at the edge of an island. And so I cast too far out and then Greg said cast again. So 1 cast, got it closer, not close enough. And I got it right on her nose and she took it and we were able to land her. We thought we had that fish, but it turns out she was only 29 pounds. So what does that tell you? There's long hours on the bow. For 3 days, I was on the bow looking, casting, searching for fish. The second day we got skunked. The third day we had this good fish and a few others. We have to deal with wind. It's in January and February. There's a lot of wind. There's weather coming off the continent. It's also very cold. Coming from Los Angeles, I'm not used to being cold. I didn't know how to dress correctly. Here I'm only in a fleece, but you shouldn't be in a fleece. You should be in a Patagonia parka or something like that. I also learned how to fight bigger fish constantly and consistently. However, remember what I said, luck favors the prepared and sometimes you can get a record fish in your backyard. So my first record actually was a corbina because I learned my lesson from that first 4-pound fish. So I was ready for it. I had my boga grit with me. I had my measuring tape. And then I was actually fly fishing for halibut and I got a corbina on a clouser. So again, this was in March 2013. It was only 3 3/4 pounds, but it was still a record at that time. But back to Louisiana marsh. So again, fly fishing for 3 straight days. On the first day of that trip, I landed 9 fish over 20 pounds. So I was in the zone. And that last fish that came on the screen, it was 30 pounds. So we were getting close. On the last day, I was tired. The Mardi Gras was going on in New Orleans. I don't drink, so we didn't have that issue, but it was fun watching the parades. So, I wasn't quite focused. But on the last day, you can see actually we did have very blue, clear skies, and it was glass, so perfect conditions. And then Greg said we were pulling, and Greg said, "Okay, cast, give me a cast at 30 feet at 10 o'clock." And I did, and he said I was so tired he didn't think I'd get it, but I hooked this fish. Now, this is a 16-pound tippet record. The fish was 33 and a half pounds. This record has been beaten by now. But, it was exciting for me because it was something I had worked for and had achieved. And this was back in 2014. So I know a lot of you are cringing by looking at this photograph. The fish by IGFA rules has to be weighed on land, or you have to kill it. And killing a fish like this is not on my radar. So we quickly weighed the fish and then put her quickly back in the water, which she was released unharmed. So we have to get measurements, we have to get photographs. And it was to the point Greg was so nervous that we almost didn't get a photograph of me with the fish and the rod and reel, which is critical to establishing a record. So IGFA records, how do I do that? So fly fishing records in fly fishing can be established in 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 16 and 20-pound tippet. That's what we call a class tippet. It's supposed to be the weakest part of the leader. Now, according to the current rules and regulations, the fish weight has to be at least, if you're establishing a record, at least half the tippet strength. So if you are fishing with 20-pound tippet, you have to get a fish that is at least 10 pounds. So the bite tippet, if you're going for a very toothy fish, can be any material. It can be mono, it can be fluorocarbon, it can be wire, but it can only be 12 inches long, and the catch has to be witnessed. You have to take these photos. You have to weigh the fish with a calibrated, in this instance, I have a boga grip, but the scale has to be calibrated or able to be calibrated. You need a measuring tape. I always carry a measuring tape with me because I never know. You have to take a photograph of the entire fish's length with the measuring tape, and then measure the fish at the thickest part of its body or the girth. So, and then today you have to take a photograph of the fish with the measuring tape at its head, and then also at its tail. And most importantly, because we almost forgot, was to take a photograph of the fish with the reel. You'll see me with a lot of photos of the reel on my shoulder. And this is just for record purposes so that IGFA can see that I actually used a rod and reel that was per regulation. And this is actually a world record carp I caught in the Los Angeles River. So if you are interested in pursuing records, and I recommend this for any woman who's fly fishing, records are, and especially for carp, none of these fly fishing records are on carp that are over 20 pounds. So if you are an angler for carp, that's considered wide open. So these are photographs of some of the record fish I have caught. Again, this is another carp I caught in the LA River. You can see part of the shopping cart in the photograph. That's a panino, and then also a horse-eyed jack. So read the regulations, become a member, get the app on your iPhone. So if you're in a situation, you can check the app, see if you're within range of a record. Entry forms are now electronic, so it's even easier than it was before. It was all paper. And go for it. If you think you have a record fish, get it. Okay, but back to more pursuits. So if your dreams don't scare you, and I love saying this, they're not big enough. If you're not intimidated by your goals, they're not big enough, because that means you're not pushing yourself hard enough. So back to the marsh. I thought, okay, got my record. Now what? And you'll see this is a theme in my life. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? And believe it or not, a week later, I got a phone call from a woman named Heidi Newt. Now, Heidi Newt at the time was running the ladies tarpon fly, and she was interested in growing the tournament to a lot more women. And she had seen these photographs on Facebook, and she called me and she said, Kesley, I'm running a tournament for Tarpon. I think you need to be a part of this. And I thought at the time, she doesn't understand geography. I told Heidi, I said, I live in Los Angeles. We don't have tarpon in LA, and she said, Kesley, I know you travel to New Orleans. I've seen you travel to the Bahamas. I know you know how to travel with a fly rod. So why don't you come to the Keys and learn how to do this? I thought, okay, challenge accepted. No problem with that. And Heidi has been a wonderful supporter ever since. So this is the 2019 Ladies Tarpon Fly Tournament poster. Chandra Rummel now runs the tournaments. It's always the second week in June. However, just a brief history, established in 1977. They were established by a group of the captain's wives who had asked, we want to participate in these tournaments that you run because we know we can fish for tarpon. We know how to land them, and we know that we could probably beat you. So the men said, absolutely not. This is a men's tournament only. You can't do it. And they said, okay, fine. We're going to set up our own tournament, and which they did. So this tournament is prestigious. It's also very historic. It's women only. It's the 2nd of June in Islamorada, Florida. It's invitational. And Heidi Newt won it 4 times. And she also holds the Tarpon IGFA record for 16-pound tippet, I think with the 145-pound tarpon. So she was just amazing. Would she ever call me? But she did. And so it took me 2 years to finally get in the tournament, but luckily for me, it took me 2 years. So this is a tarpon. It's different from any other fish I have ever fished for. It has this giant bucket mouth, which becomes very important when you're setting the hook. It has a mouth of concrete. The eyes are positioned up high on its head, so looking for food above its. The fish can also breathe air. It doesn't necessarily always rely on its gills. So that becomes very important when you're fighting the fish and they become tired and they gulp air. Because if they gulp air, you have at least another 15 minutes of fight on your hands. So again, I called my brother. I said, I need to learn how to fish for tarpon. And he said, well, I know just the guy. So he hooked me up with one of his friends, Chris Kerr. And we went out into some of the canals in Florida, and I caught my first tarpon. It was a baby, and I thought, this doesn't seem that difficult. I don't know what people are talking about. Well, couldn't have been more stupid. So this was fun. It was pretty, but I thought, okay, how am I going to prepare for a tarpon tournament from Los Angeles? So again, I just started fishing like crazy for carp. Carp are they're spooky, they're hard to see, they don't take the flies very well, and you need a lot of skill. So I taught myself this is an LA River carp. This is a river, so it's not at all like anything you would see in the Everglades or in the Keys. Again, another one. I also started fly fishing for corbina in the surf. Again, these 2 fish would probably prepare you best for a bonefish tournament, not a tarpon tournament. But again, these are probably the 2 of the most challenging fish in Los Angeles. But in spite of their challenge of seeing and hooking these, they still don't have the strength that a tarpon does. So I started looking for pelagics offshore. And this is what we call a California yellowtail. They have quite a bit of fight in them. But I still needed bigger fish. So again, bigger fish, bigger carp, going out onto the lakes for sight fishing. I also went to Phoenix to look for grass carp, set a record on this fish. And then I also went out to Oahu to look for bonefish out there. So in the Pacific, I went for. Also in the summer, I started looking, as like I said, for pelagics. Like this was a 20-pound Dorado that I caught. It had the pull. I had to use a 12 weight, although I probably could have gotten away with a 10 weight, but still it was using the heavier rod. And also we have a lot of yellowfin tuna in the summer. Now these guys start getting into that physical range where you need to start using your entire body to fight it. This fish took me about 20 minutes to land, and that sounded, so it was deep and it was fighting me every inch of the way. but it taught me how to really use my drag. Unfortunately, it was just one fish. I needed a lot more, but it also taught me that I need to get a little stronger. So if I really wanted to compete, I really needed to learn how to fight a tarpon. And I was really keen on learning how to fight a tarpon. So how do you learn how to fish for tarpon from California? You hit the road. I got my passport, and even though I had been going to the Keys, I thought I needed more practice. So I went to Belize and Costa Rica. So this is myself fly fishing for permit in Belize. It took 70-foot cast, setting up my shot, visualizing the shot, and then getting that fish in. And this was among some of the first tarpon I was catching in Costa Rica. This fish actually jumped into the boat, which was unexpected, but we managed to unhook it and we claimed it was caught. Tarpon that you need to learn is how to bow to the king. And this, I just made a short video for everybody to watch. It's called Jump, and I'll walk you through it. So in Costa Rica, we were fly fishing on the Caribbean side by the Panamanian border, and it was actually a river mouth. And this is one of my first tarpon. You can see I'm late on the bow. And here is actually a fish that's probably over 120 pounds. You can see it leaping, and I was a touch late on the bow, but again, I was getting better at it. And then to Belize, where I was also fly fishing for tarpon. This was actually a fish in 30 feet of water, which I had hooked. They were on a bait ball. I caught 3 tarpon before we hooked this solid fish. She was 105 when we measured her. And the best part about it was that this fish we were fighting this fish for 40 minutes in front of a bar during happy hours. So I had a crowd of people cheering. Land this fish because I know everybody on that beach. They'll never let me live it down. I said, okay. So back to the Florida Keys.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is Luis Cortez. And this is about a 70 pound, probably 60 to 70 pound fish. So again, I had to he really hammered me. You've got to be fast on the bow. So here's me hamming it up. But you see, this time I had really bowed. So, you know, I loved it. So again, another shot of a leaping, pissed off tarpon. You have to bow in order to give. If you don't give, the fish is going through its power, just rip the hook out of its mouth. So here's another shot in the glades on a very, another beautiful sunny day. And again, you can see the bow. I'm much better at it now. And here's an 80-pound fish we got deep in the backcountry.
Give it to her. Go down, keep reading down, all the way to her eyeball. Pull.
And the whole point of this was to antagonize the fish. The water in this case is not full of oxygen, so the fish will tire out faster. So we wanted to tire her out, so we antagonized her. And here you can see that she's done. And that's how you know you can do the face grab and everything else. So moving on, just to say this, tarpon will test you. So this fish, this is again back in Costa Rica, this fish I had hooked and she came to the boat but was playing possum. And just when we thought we could get a face grab, she turned, just swam under the boat and snapped my rod because my drag was on too tight. And this was actually a rookie error. You have to have give in your rod. So when these powerful fish move like that, you have to be ready. You can't exactly have your drag on so tight because they will break your gear. So just keep that in mind. So tarpon aren't easy, but they're worth every single minute. So I continued my chase. My coworkers even got in on it from Amgen. They told me, you need to go to this meeting in Puerto Rico. and you need to go a day early. So I flew 9 hours to Puerto Rico, had 4 hours of sleep, met my guide at the dock at 5 in the morning, and we went tarpon fishing around the airport. And I got this fish on a 7 weight, and it was absolutely worth it. And then back to the Keys several times to fly fish again for tarpon. So finally, we get to the tournament, and this is Luis being God. We are looking for tarpon. We came in first place that first day, believe it or not. We had leadered 2 fish, so not a great day, but we still made it. But we had never thought that we would be in the lead, so we weren't prepared for it. So, we said, okay, chalk it up to inexperience. We're going to go for it next year. And so I went back to the drawing board and I focused on tarpon fishing again, but with a lot more intensity. And one thing I learned during the tournament, doing more of what doesn't work. So we have to have a new angle. So I did a lot of strength training. I have a weak back, like I said, it has been injured. So I hired a personal trainer to help me strengthen my back. Oops, let's go back. To strengthen my back. This actually is a photograph from this morning in my house. I don't have photos of me in the gym, thank goodness. But improved my back strength, improved my core strength to fight the fish, and then also found out that I was badly anemic, so I was getting tired far too easily. So again, look at yourself. What can you do physically to improve? And then also look very closely at the Keys, not going to Costa Rica or Belize or Puerto Rico, to understand the different types of fishing for tarpon dependent on the geography. So on the ocean side, there's a lot of oxygen in the water. And these fish are essentially commuting. They're not necessarily there to eat. They're either going north or they're going south. And again, there's a lot of oxygen in the water. So if you start fighting a fish on the ocean, you're in for a very long fight. And you have to be strong and you have to be physical. On the glade side, the further you go into the backcountry or closer to Florida, the mainland, the water is going to be less oxygenated. So the angler actually has the advantage to fight the fish a lot less. They get very big, don't get me wrong. You are going to be in for a fight, but the fight's not going to last quite as long. But one thing about the ocean side is the water's clear. You can see the fish much better, but they can also see you. And there's also a very distinct way of fighting or casting to these fish. So this is what it looks like. This is actually a school of tarpon that the angler probably spooked or headed right at the angler. And if you can't see it, this is a circle. So again, this is the ocean side. This is a grass flat going to sand. So the tarpon will move in a line. This is a line of tarpon. And when I talk about tarpon fishing, I talk that when I show this, I say the angler is late to the game. So basically half of the fish have already moved past the angler. And you can see if we start thinking in trajectories, this is a straight line. And then you start thinking, at a 90-degree angle. So that's half the fish already beyond that 90-degree angle. Why is that important? Well, when you're casting to tarpon or any fish that's on a flat, you want to cast to them at a 45-degree angle or less. When you do this and you start stripping the fly looks like it's running away from the fish, so that the fish would initiate a chase. If you cast at the fish at 90 degrees or greater, the fly, when you strip the fly, it looks like it's attacking the fish and they'll spook. So you never want to do that. So in this instance, where you have to compensate for cast and letting the fly sink, and then also the movement of the fish. So here, the fish you're casting to are actually at the end of the line. So again, you have to visualize how the cast, you have to understand the angle and understand how the fish is moving. And it's not easy. It took me days. And then you also have throw in wind. So here it becomes very important that you have accuracy, precision, ability to cast into the wind. I can't emphasize that enough. And then also understand how quickly that fish is moving. So again, back in California, I can't do this every day. So I went to the casting pond. So again, you just take your ego, throw it away, and start saying, okay, I need to learn it all over again. So you can always relearn your cast. So my good friend Joe LeBou said, okay, Kesley, let's do this. And so we just took my cast apart, and I would go down to the casting pond and I relearned how to cast. I also learned, how to feel a mistake and how to correct it, which was very important. So here I am with a double haul. This is actually in Maine. You can see that look of determination. And that's something that's very unique to me. Another thing I learned when you're really getting into the advanced is when you're casting to tarpon, always put that rod under your arm. It seems obvious now, but at the time it wasn't. This is to prevent a trout set or lifting the fly out of the fish's mouth. Again, you have to think about that big bucket mouth and taking that fly out of its mouth. If you have a rod and reel under your arm, you can't trout set. And again, this is another big lesson. Clear the line. When you have a big fish on, and if you notice in that video I showed initially, you'll notice the line is jumping all over the place. And in this photograph, you can see that the line has wrapped around the angler's wrist. It's important you know where that line is at all times when the fish is going ballistic, so that you don't accidentally pull the fly, break the line, break the tippet, the class tippet, etc. So I asked Greg Denny, this is his photograph, I said, did the angler actually land the fish? It didn't look like he did. And he said, yes, he did. He knew very quickly where that line was. So clear the line. And on windy days, and this is my Achilles heel, on windy days, which is the majority of days in the Keys, it's usually blowing at 20 miles an hour. The guide will anchor the skiff and the skiff will face into the wind. And as usual, you have to cast into the wind and to fish. So this happened to me a few times. So we have a 20-mile-an-hour wind in your face. You actually have sun, so you can see the fish. You can see the terror approaching you. You have a 120-pound tarpon. What do? If you cast how you normally would, you're probably going to hit your guide, which is not a good thing, or the line is going to come back in your face. So he or she has to turn the boat, and then you cast. And at least when you cast, the line is going to be behind you. So it's a team effort. I haven't emphasized this enough, but when you are and your guide are on the boat, you are absolutely a team, and you have to coordinate, understand each other, and communicate well. But again, back to California, there are no flats, there are no tarpon. So I put it upon myself to fly fish and fish for ocean fish as much as possible. So here I am with a yellowtail. I was also fishing for our favorite Calico Bass. Calico Bass are thugs. They're very strong. I would fish at night. I'd fish for a big California yellowtail. I was trying to beat a 16-pound record. I needed a 25-pound or 26-pound fish. I only made 23, but I was using my 12 weight, and this was a fantastic fight. Used my entire body. Then for bonito, I was also going back and forth to Florida, to visit my brother, sight fish for snook, go to Mexico, going for a grand slam, just anything I could sink my teeth into and go for and just constantly cast. But nothing compares to actually fishing for tarpon. So again, you can hear that I was probably at a severe disadvantage, but I tried my best to overcome it. So one of our values at Amgen is to compete intensely. And it's not good enough just to compete, you've got to win. So this is Chandra Rummel on the flats in the Everglades, casting to a tarpon. You can see the thunderhead. You can see the clearness of the water. You can see the different keys. And this is what it's like. You'll have to imagine the heat, but you can imagine the lightning, you can imagine the thunder, and you can also probably imagine the rolling tarpon. It's a unique and beautiful place and something I miss tremendously. So this is our group of women for the 2018 tournament. They're very competitive. They're fantastic anglers. They have wonderful attitudes. They come from across the country, from Florida, from Alaska, from Alabama, California, Texas, you name it, they've probably come to the tournament. And, what a great bunch of women, very inspiring and very competitive. So this is, we don't take pictures during a tournament. So these are some shots from our practice. So you can see I had an athletic stance because I was much stronger. And this is myself and Luis on the first day. And, you know, we did it and we won. I led for we led for 2 days. And on the third day, we were still in the lead. And that was something I had never prepared for. I had never prepared for the mental pressure of keeping that lead and bringing it home. I think I have, you know, I'm under the gun at work at Amgen constantly, but it was like condensing 3 years of product development into 3 days. It was that hard. But we won. And one thing I wanted to, you know, I was hoping Luis would be here, but this slide is dedicated to him. He is a great guide, and your guides have to be great. They have to really push you. They have to understand what it's like to fish with a woman and overcome that sometimes. They're your partner, your confidant, your greatest critic, so probably one of your closest friends at that time. So this is for you, Luis, and thank you. So there's also, I had a tournament support group. There are a lot of names here. As you know, you hear the saying, it takes a village. Well, it certainly took a village for me to keep me going. You know, I can't, even for calling me up and say, get out of bed and get out there, Kesley. And then also to my mother. She heard me cry on the phone coming home from a terrible trip to the Keys where I just could not hook a fish for 3 straight days because of the wind. And she would always say, those damn tarpon, Kesley. And I remember when I won the tournament, I called her and I said, Mom, I won. And she started to cry. So this is also for her. So what's next? I don't know. My boyfriend who's sitting right here, he wants me to go for an offshore Grand Slam. So we're going to try billfish. He's an expert at it. I have to go back to the gym and get even stronger. I really don't know what's next, but you know, whatever it is, it's going to be a great adventure. So thank you to all of you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Please, if you want, please follow me on Instagram at Steely Chick. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to Belize in April, and I am going to catch a tarpon. And now I know how to do it. So thank you. We do have a couple questions. I know we're a little bit over, but are you willing to stay on for a little bit?
Yes, me. I will, absolutely.
All right. So Sally from Minnesota wants to know what you meant by travel with a fly rod.
Let's
or
see.
Learn how to travel
with a fly rod. Well, there are, I wish I had my slide with the rod case. To travel with a fly rod, you have to have is always bring that rod case with you on the plane. The rods and the reels are worth thousands of dollars, and the last thing you want to do is lose them, say in the hull or within the baggage. So always bring that with you. I hold the rod case more dearly than I do my computer.
And then Tracy says, hi, I'm listening from Canada. She wants to know if it's possible that they could ever get an invite and compete in any of these competitions.
Sure. And I'll get you in touch with Chandra Rummel. So she can tell you all about this year's tournament and how to get invited.
A lot of these Q&As are thank yous and loving the presentation. And you have fans here, so keep your challenges up, a great journey. Somebody would like to know if they could get a hold of you, do you have an email?
Yes, it's again, steelychick@yahoo.com.
Okay, Steely as in steelhead, Steely chick.
Yeah, STEELIECHICK at yahoo.com.
Um, and Molly says, what an athlete. And she was just impressed with how important it is to know how much it takes. And Molly Semenik, I mean, she's an athlete in herself and a guide. And so that's quite a compliment, let me tell you. And she also thanks
Thank
you
you.
for a great presentation. You have Randy who says you're his hero. And fish.
Hi, Randy.
And you do say
I
hi,
know.
Mom. Mom was on tonight,
Hi,
right?
Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Yes, she was.
We have a question from Michelle. She wants to know if you can bring flies on the plane if you put them in your rod case.
Yes, you can. But don't bring your pliers because they'll confiscate those. Don't bring your confiscate the liquid. So any sharps keep out of your rod case. Just bring the rods, reels, and then you can also bring flies. You'll get a lot of strange looks from TSA. They're not used to seeing a woman angler with a lot of gear, but too bad for them. So just be prepared that you sometimes could be searched.
And that I don't see that answered. Oh, you have you are a big sweetheart and you're loved to death, and you're a rock star angler. So there you go. Oh, I have a question. Do you tie your own flies?
I do. In fact, for that trip to Belize and Costa Rica, I had to bring all of my own flies. So
Ooh, would
it
you be
was,
willing to do a fly tying night for us?
but one thing I will say, helped me there with the flies was Dan Blanton. He developed a whistler when he did a lot of fly fishing for tarpon in Costa Rica. And he handed me a box of whistlers for the trip. And thank goodness he did, because that's how we caught those tarpon.
Yeah, and so can I sign you up to do a fly tying night with us?
um, yeah, when I start practicing again.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put you on the spot in front of all of our participants.
Okay, okay.
Um, oh, there you go. I have your, yep, they were like, make sure you get your email. You have from Marcy in Colorado. She said she's never been saltwater fishing. She sends you a thank you and says now she's inspired.
Oh, good.
So,
Go for those redfish.
and Nicole
You can't beat the redfish.
Nicole says the
Go
same
ahead.
thing.
Sorry.
You inspired her. So you have Kim who says she has multiple physical issues, a bad back, and she's like, you convinced her to still get out there. And she ties
Yes.
her own flies too. So this is wonderful to read this. Oh, and Kim wants to know what's your favorite fish to catch besides tarpon?
You know, I don't have one. I've always admired somebody who actually has a favorite fish, like Wade. He loves bonefish and permit. That's all he goes for. And to me, I'm going to go trophy brown trout fishing quite soon, and then go for cutthroat trout in Pyramid Lake, and then we're hoping to go for marlin, later this year. So honestly, I think it's just I love to fly fish, especially for a very challenging fish. So that's my favorite fish. The harder it is, the more I like.
Oh, and here we have somebody wanting to give away your secrets. Cheryl O'Neill wants to know what is your favorite permit fly for the Bahamas?
Oh wow. Um, I would still go. There's several. Oh, man, I've never caught a permit in the Bahamas or for Belize. I wish I had my box of flies because I'd be able to show you. I'm not very good with names, but I could show you the pattern I like. It's a size 2. And it's a mercantile fly.
Um, we have a question. That cylindrical item on the boat next to you, is that to keep your fly line in?
Yes, it's called a bucket. You know, we put our fly line in, and so that it just keeps it from out from under our feet, so we can clear the line easily, or we know where the line is, and then when Sandy, when you and I were practicing, you said, "Wait a minute, you're not barefoot. You're wearing shoes." And so I'm able to wear shoes to support my feet and my back
Mhm.
by having that bucket in front of me.
And even though you keep talking about tarpon, we have a question. Is there a better fish than tarpon?
Well, what you don't see is the man staring at me from across the screen, and he's a marlin expert and a billfish expert. So he's telling me, yes, there is, and you're going to find out. So I'm hoping that sailfish will be on my list of species soon. So then I'll be able to give you a good answer.
And I think this person knows it's Lino Jubilado.
Yes,
That was one of your big compliments and said hello. Anyway, here's the question. If you could only take one fly pattern on your travels, what's that fly?
that would be Dan Blanton's Whistler, hands
Okay.
down. Yeah, that
And
catches everything.
um, Sherry, who's one of our faithful fly tires, every Tuesday, she says she loves the advice, and she said lessons um, that we all need to think about as we learn. So thank you so much. I actually have a question, and was have never seen it before because from Minnesota, we winter in Montana, and so to come down to Florida and fish, oh, that trout set kills me. It just kills me. So
Yes.
when do you put the rod under your arm? Do you do it after the cast and you're going to set, or that is a trick I need to know?
You okay, if we I wish I could show that video again, but you cast the fly and then you immediately put the rod and reel under your arm. So it's something you can even practice, trout fishing.
Okay.
And everybody knows when I've been tarpon fishing, because I'll put the rod and reel under my arm, even though it's trout. They're like, no, 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 wrong species. But yeah, immediately put it under your arm, and then you can do the double hand strip
Okay.
as fast or as slow as you need to. And then you do the strip strike, but that rod and reel still under your arm.
And I have told everybody, because I have a Baja trip and this Belize trip coming up, the clock in my head is the biggest struggle for me. I'm going to bring a permanent marker, and my whole arm is going to be 9 and 3. Do you have a tip to say, because it's got to immediate, you better know where 11 is like yesterday?
You know, I had a man ask me for help. He's like, I'm going on my first redfish trip. I've heard you've done this. Could you help me? I said, okay, meet me down by the casting pond. And he said, okay, what are we going to do? And I said, I'm going to treat you like you're on the bow of the boat. He said, okay. So he stood there. I stood fish coming left or right, 60 feet, go, 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 go. And he went, oh, and he freaked out. But at least he started getting used to going in every direction. And he said that was the best practice he had, because it brought him to what he did not know about and brought it front and center.
Well, I'm going to get ready on the soccer fields now. So hopefully nobody calls the
And
cops.
bring somebody with
Been screaming at me. 60 feet right
you.
now. Here we go. Have you
Right,
ever
right now.
have you ever tried fly fishing from a kayak?
I do it all the time. In fact, I have a kayak. I live on a lake here in California, and I have a kayak. I fly fish for bass all the time. I had a kayak on my mother's lake in New Hampshire, and I would go out fly fishing for hours at a time for smallmouth bass. So I learned how to use the kayak and learned how to drift with the wind and then cast to different docks or whatever structure. Fly fishing from a kayak is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be very effective.
They do that quite a bit down here in Florida, and one
Yeah.
of our instructors teaches it. Karen Hall is very proud of you.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for inviting me too.
And Michelle Key says, thank you so much. She's very inspired. And just so you know, you had an audience of 85.
Nice.
So that was a nice crowd. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for putting up with a little bit of stuttering. You know, we live in this virtual world, and I appreciate all your patience. Kesley, I hope you come back. This was just a delight, and learned so much, and I'm going to be calling you.
Okay. Bring it. I'm ready.
So
Okay.
everybody, Women Connect at flyfishersinternational.org if you want to be up to date on our webinars and our Zooms and our fly tying and our zappy hours. Kesley, SteelyChick at yahoo.com. Everybody stay healthy. Thank you for getting on. Oh, wait a minute. One more comment here. I wonder, we had a question. Don't forget all the people that were probably watching live stream. So, you know, we had well over 1,000 tonight.
Okay. I'm glad I don't have anything in my teeth.
All right, love you.
Okay.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your patience with putting up with all of our issues, and we'll see you soon. Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.